Hello everyone. Thank you for coming in attendance today. My name is Colin Moreland. I work with 3ESI and I'm going to be presenting today a recap of the SP paper 169853 titled Transforming Portfolio Optimization Through Re-Engineered Processes and Technologies. This paper was originally presented at the Society of Petroleum Engineers Hydrocarbon Economics Evaluation Symposium this year, or HEES conference as I may refer to it later on. And really what this is talking about is the implementation, challenges, and results of 3ESI's joint deployment of a tool called Asset Investment Solutions within the Chevron Gulf of Mexico business unit. Over the next half hour, I'll get into more detail on that and share the highlights of the paper with you as well. I do welcome everybody to take time during or after the presentation and review the actual white paper itself, which will go into significantly more detail on the specific topics that I'm going to go into today. But thank you again for coming, and we'll get into it. So the entire project of implementing the asset investment solution at the Chevron Gulf of Mexico business unit was really a response to Chevron's desire to look for efficiencies across their organization. The team we worked with within Chevron is a somewhat specialized group of individuals working as a cross-functional team. Their mandate is to look for efficiencies and streamline business processes in 4 key areas within the organization. The first of which being great data. How can they put systems, processes, and tools in place to ensure that information necessary for key business decisions is always accurate, is reliable, and available in a timely fashion? They're also tasked to generate what are called smart engines, tools that take the human error out of the equation of humans using technology, systems that catch problems before they become problems, that work with the user to prevent errors either in data entry or in data calculation, and finally, that become trusted processes, giving repeatable, trusted results time and time again. This team is focused on reimagining workflows, finding new and innovative ways to do the same thing that's been done the same way many years in a row, challenging that just because the way something is done the way it is doesn't mean it's being done the best way it could be. And finally, through all of these things and more, empowering the people within the Chevron organization to be the most effective, efficient, and safe in their workplace as they can possibly be. So within that mandate, this group and us at 3SI were posed with a challenge. As a combined team, we were challenged to find a way to more efficiently allocate resources within the Chevron organization. How do they invest a very scarce set of resources, both human, equipment, and resources such as rigs and constraints, in a way that would allow them to meet their corporate objectives of doing more with less? At the same time, how do we assist them in measuring their performance more accurately, utilizing their key performance metrics for their business unit, and use those to link together the short-term and long-term plans into one cohesive representation of the past, present, and future performance of their business unit that could then be looked back upon to compare performance against plan. In implementing those, a method of standardization had to be developed and identified that would allow the business unit with multiple asset teams, functional groups, and levels of management at work to use a common language, a common operational data store, a single tool that could be used to consistently evaluate all of their opportunities and can give consistent results that could be compared across different functional teams. It was no longer good enough for one group to continue to excel if it meant that it couldn't be compared against any other part of the organization. They had to be able to compare all of the parts of the team using the same base characteristics. With standardization comes transparency. If everyone is now being evaluated using the same tool, the same language, and measurement of performance is becoming a key to the business unit, how does the organization drive the transparency to show how those measurements are being undertaken and that standardization is being followed across the business? That was a key deliverable that had to be part of the answer to this challenge that we were posed with. And finally, proactive decision making. By having all of the information available, by following a consistent and common method for making decisions within the business unit, by being transparent about the process with which decisions were made, and layering on all of those organizational goals of achieving great data based on smart engines, utilizing reimagined workflows, and being driven by empowered people. How do we make decisions in a more timely fashion to improve data and plan quality, to make decisions more quickly, and to be able to respond to business opportunities in real time? That was the challenge posed to our combined team when we set out upon this journey what seems like a very long time ago. We had a ways to go to achieve those fairly lofty organizational goals. So where did we start from? Well, in our pre-deployment state, before Asset Investment Solutions, or AIS, was even an acronym, there was a problem. Actually, there were many problems. The business unit suffered from multiple tools being used to forecast and plan within their different teams. This prevented them from achieving their goals of transparency and standardization. As soon as you have more than one single source of record, you have no single source of record. Their team spent time trying to pull information together and were never truly able to achieve a direct comparison of equal information across their teams. And of course, what that led to was poor cross-organizational transparency. When one set of opportunities is being evaluated using a completely different set of criteria and tools than another set of opportunities, you lose the credibility and transparency that a single tool and single approach give you. The end result of that was that there was no direct link between their short-term tactical asset plan and the long-term strategic plan. Very often they would sacrifice long-term value creation in order to meet short-term business objectives. That's a challenge that faces many companies that I've had the opportunities of working with over the last several years. The trade-off of today's business goals against the long-term value of our portfolio is one very difficult to even be aware of, let alone plan around, when you have multiple systems of record and no consistent single source of truth for your entire organization. So the result of that was that the asset plans very often reflected a very short-term view of the world. They were accurate anywhere from 6 to 18 months, but beyond that, the accuracy and the usability of them was quite limited. So you can imagine that if your strategic plan is built on asset plans, if your short-term asset plans are only accurate for 6 to 18 months, imagine what a 5-year or 10-year strategic view, imagine how accurate that is. And ultimately what that all led to was lack of standardization, not only in the format of the plans, but in their applicability across the business unit. So there were challenges that were definitely impacting the value that the Chevron organization was getting out of their portfolio of opportunities. And there was significant area for improvement when we started this project. So based on the definition of what that challenge was and where we started, where did we need to go? What did a good end result look like where we were able to achieve those business goals of efficiently allocating resources, measuring performance, achieving standardization, being transparent, and being able to make decisions proactively. Well, sitting down as a team, we identified a few key characteristics of a future state that would achieve those overarching goals. Firstly, the solution had to achieve robust data integration. It was recognized that if we ever were able to migrate everybody to a single source of truth, it was going to be a progressive effort getting there. It wasn't going to be something that could happen overnight. And in the interim, something had to exist that would allow the end users, the asset teams, to be able to do their business while at the same time providing that integrated view of the information coming from many different disparate systems. So the system had to have a robust data integration layer that would automatically pull together data from all the different systems into the consolidated source that everybody could then use for the analysis. The solution had to be built around a single shared vision. No team could be exempt from the solution that was going to be implemented. Standardization can only be achieved when everybody buys in. And so a major effort throughout the entire planning, execution, and even post-deployment process was to work with the teams to build a single shared vision and get everybody centered around the benefit that a single solution would bring to their team. I'm happy to say this was something that was achieved, which I'll speak to more in the second half of this presentation. That solution had to be characterized by significant visualization capabilities around reporting and the portfolio. Transparency is only as good as how easily the information coming out of it is at portraying that information. Said a different way, a giant spreadsheet with a whole bunch of numbers spread over a bunch of different tabs wasn't going to cut it because that wasn't going to be very clear as to where the data came from. There had to be a very tightly integrated and very easy to use visualization solution here that would allow all these different disparate teams to access their information in a meaningful, relevant, and rapid manner. Tied into that, the solution had to integrate both process and system to enable the proactive and streamlined decision making. A solution that made planning longer, that made decisions take longer because of significant burden on the system or the users to learn and use that system was not going to be one that was going to deliver the value. So there had to be a high degree of focus on usability, on something that could give very quick answers to key business questions, and something that could support the complex decision-making process that the Chevron organization has built 10 years of organizational excellence around in a single tool. A key piece of that is the ability to optimize investment opportunities, to build in logic into the tool that can help the end user get to the right decision faster. It's not just good enough to get to an answer if it's not the right answer. And the right answer is only characterized by the one that delivers the best value overall to the business, based on the balance of short-term business objectives and long-term strategic goals. Optimization, therefore, had to become a piece of that. And finally, the solution had to give some way of efficiently utilizing limited resources. And this was actually meant in two ways. First was from a systems perspective, the ability to model the utilization and assignment of resources across the team, be it drilling rigs, offshore platforms, or even the availability of specific resources such as geologists or geoscientists. The second meaning here, though, was the efficient utilization of the resources using the system. So the user's time had to be used in an effective manner. The system couldn't overburden the process. The solution had to be one that was more efficient than what was in place today. Planning, decision-making, opportunity capture, all of these key business functions had to be improved by the process, not made more onerous. And so an awareness to both of those characteristics had to be made as we move forward with the solution. If we could achieve these 6 key deliverables, we were confident that we could deliver the business value desired in this solution. In the early days, after agreeing what needed to happen, we put together a very simple model of what the overall business workflow would look like once the tool was in place. This was characterized by an interaction between 3 key business functional stacks, the transfer of information between them, and the progressive elaboration of those activities, both within and between one another. So the entire process starts with opportunity maturation. And opportunity maturation is focused exclusively on ensuring that the data captured is high quality and captured in a timely manner. Maturation is focused on being able to qualify the business opportunities and ensure that all of the mandatory information is provided and that all the opportunities are captured in a consistent format, in a consistent way, in a timely manner. As part of the transition from opportunity maturation to asset development planning is also an initial scenario analysis and review of the projects themselves that go into and feed the asset development plan. By doing a first phase rank and cut analysis of the projects at this phase, asset development planning is enhanced in its effectiveness, efficiency, and overall performance by eliminating those opportunities that may not meet organizational thresholds and may not add value to the planning process at the asset level. So that once opportunities get to the asset level, the focus can be exclusively on that planning and analysis activity. The development of the long-term asset development plan. Building out a view of your entire asset from inception to completion, from first spud to the final off stream, 35, 40, 50 years, an entire reservoir, an entire asset, developing that resource, and what that looks like from an optimal method of recovering all those resources. The combination of the asset development plans and the scheduling of those activities feeds directly into the annual budget. Selecting which plans and which elements of those plans to proceed with at this time becomes the annual budget. And asking whether or not that budget and those plans are feasible given the constraints of a physical world focuses on resource allocation and whether or not that can be done with the resources available. Similar to qualifying the data from the opportunity catalog into the asset development plan, the resource allocation step really provides a check and balance before that plan gets used in the strategic business plan to ask if it's worth looking at and if the assumptions are ones that are sound enough to be used for setting long-term strategic goals. And finally, by the time we get to the strategic business planning, the focus shifts to optimization. Building an optimized portfolio that delivers value, not just against today's short-term goals, but against the long-term strategic goals of ongoing growth, value maximization, and value retention inherent to decision-making in today's very competitive oil and gas industry. The strategic business plan is focused on building out a feasible, optimized, long-term plan that can be executed on over 10, 15, even 20 years to ensure that the business is going to realize all of the potential value out of their current portfolio of opportunities. That strategic plan and the guidance it provides feeds then directly back into what opportunities get pursued, what data needs to be collected around them, and ultimately what the thresholds are that will determine whether or not those opportunities get included in the planning cycle again. Overall, the process is fully integrated and cyclical, each step feeding into the next without truly ever stopping. There's always an interface and interaction between them, and information is simply transitioned from one step to the next, one functional group to the next, as the opportunities mature and the plan progresses throughout the year. In an effort to communicate this effectively to their organization, the project team developed this view of the organization to attempt to explain what we were trying to accomplish. On the left, we have a representation of the different functional teams involved in this process to make it work. Asset development planning, that short-term view of the annual budget, the resource-constrained view of the world, and overall, the development plan for an asset over the life of that individual asset. The opportunity maturation function, gathering the data, ensuring that opportunities are identified and effectively characterized for decision making, and business planning, pulling that information from both of the previous functions together into the long-term business plan and strategic guidance that, of course, as just mentioned, feeds back into the outputs generated from both other teams. What this graphic ultimately seeks to illustrate is the relationship of these groups and all of the different data elements, tools, and interactions that are potential between these different teams. So what you see is in the center of this sheet, the opportunity cataloging system. This was the heart of the asset investment solution initiative that we tried to implement. Prior to AIS being implemented, each of the cross-functional relationships represented by the arrows extending from that central database across the teams was represented as a myriad of arrows from each of the individual functional elements to the related elements in the other teams. So here, our asset development engineer would provide the economic data and the reserves data, but instead of all information flowing into a single source of truth, we would have that data flowing once up to the asset development team information here. We'd have another arrow feeding it up into the facilities group, another one feeding it down into the local business planner. And generally speaking, each of those arrows represented not only a unique request where that data had to be extracted, prepared, and presented, but for the poor asset development engineer in that case, a unique body of work that he had to do to present the exact same information to an entirely new group of people. So there were definitely inherent inefficiencies in the process, because every time the same information was needed by a different team, they had to go request it. They had to go ask for it. It had to be prepared for them. They had to wait while it was prepared, and the owner of that information had to often prepare a one-off presentation for whoever was asking for it. So the vision here, that shared solution that everybody needed to get behind for this rollout to be a success, was represented by quite simply the 4 arrows, linking the opportunity maturation teams, the asset development planners, and the business planners together using a single repository of information built upon and maintained by all of them as a team. The independent and redundant data sources would go away. The inefficiencies in the process would be significantly reduced, and the individuals could focus not on transferring information and looking for the data they needed, but on making those decisions necessary to deliver value to the organization. After several months of planning, requirement gathering, solution design, more planning, and working the vision with the teams, the Integrated Opportunity Catalog was realized within the Gulf of Mexico Business Unit. This tool you see in front of you was the result of many months of effort, of integration and different planning within the teams, and a representation of every one of those fundamental goals that the team had set out to achieve, of efficient resource allocation, performance measurement, standardization, transparency, and proactivity. I'd like to take you on a tour now through that vision and how it translated into this particular tool and what that tool enabled that business unit to do. It started out with simply being able to visualize their entire business for the first time, bringing together data from all of the different asset teams, asset managers, engineers, earth scientists, geologists, production engineers, and business planners into a single system that could represent all of their data together and filter that data to just the information relevant to the specific user groups and to the specific functions they were performing, eliminated the need to go back and forth constantly between one another looking for information. It enabled them all to use one tool for the first time in the 108-year history of the organization, going back to the Standard Oil Company at the turn of the century, and start to look at combined decisions for the first time. Using that combined tool, they were then able to do additional work. A schedule was assigned to the different projects. They could now see how work that was being proposed within one asset team would line up with another. If conflicts were to be introduced, they could see it from the moment that opportunity got scheduled through to the moment that it got funded, and even beyond into execution and look back. When delays occurred, did they occur because of a conflict? These were things that could be seen for the first time. The execution plan brought together into the same system as the business plan, the budget, and the operational execution plan of the business into a single tool. In offshore, the availability of the platforms were now available to the planners, and they could ask questions such as, do we have capacity for this rig? Can we move this platform sooner to somewhere else? The integration of the hopper combined with the integrated scheduling tool allowed them to ask and answer these questions very rapidly. Single scenarios within one asset development group that would have taken days were reduced to hours. So more scenarios were able to be created, which resulted in more effective resource schedules and more efficient use of resources. But I'm getting into results. I'll cover those more at the end. One of the key tenets of the system was it had to have detailed analysis, measurement, and reporting capabilities. So some of the types of reporting that were capable were operational reporting. Being able to look at the overall operating costs of the business unit in real time, month by month as the data was being made available, allowed them to ask questions much sooner. Instead of waiting for the year end to do a reconciliation and look back became a monthly process. Are we performing in our actuals as we thought on the forecast? If so, what is contributing to that? If not, more importantly, What's changed? Why are we not performing as planned? Are we exceeding our plan's expectations? Or are we falling behind? Regardless, how do we capture those learnings that are enabling us to be better and respond to those issues that are putting our organizational goals at risk? Through detailed operational tracking of the operating costs of the business, they were able to respond to this months sooner before those business goals for the year were impacted. Similarly, we could do the same thing for production. In this example, why did we have a shortfall in Q4 of 2011? Why did we dip down in our actual? At that point, we can take a look and see what was going on. We can investigate individual opportunities. We can look at it by each individual asset plan. We can find the areas where we had a shortfall and inquire what was going on. Did we have a more aggressive than expected hurricane season that progressed into the third quarter? Did we overshoot our expectations? Was our fourth quarter more aggressive than it should have been? We can ask those questions and get answers to more effectively model what our future-looking world should look like. And finally, the same sort of analysis can be done on capital. Looking at those capital dollars as they're being spent, assessing our spend profile, and determining how accurate we are to budget allows us to better estimate what our required contingency is, which areas are more accurate than others to inform more effective long-term strategic planning, and allows us to do trend analysis to make the forecasts themselves more accurate so that when we do make our plans, we are more likely to hit them, meaning that we have more resources available to plan because less of them are held for contingency and for the unknowns based on a history of non-compliance to plan. Overall, this vision truly realized for that business unit each of those individual areas. The scheduling engine, allowing them to efficiently allocate those resources, see where conflicts existed, and work out permutations of the most efficient plan possible. Measuring performance through real-time tracking and reporting on business realities, and the ability to respond to those in real time. Standardization, pulling the entire business unit and all asset teams together into one system and one place where all teams are being evaluated using the same tools, drives transparency and ensures infinite accountability of both the individuals inputting and managing the data and those making the decisions based on that data, enabling proactivity at all levels, identifying and entering ideas before being asked if they exist, building out more accurate annual budgets, and enabling your business to hit those targets on a more frequent and more reliable basis, and building strategic plans that are based on a history of proven performance, trend analysis, and the realities of how the business is performing to maximize value in the long term. In coming up with that solution, finding the tool, configuring it, implementing it, and ultimately looking back at the body of work involved in making that happen, the project team had a few thoughts that we wanted to share with anybody who considers taking on a similar type of initiative in the future. The first of which is to ensure that we fully scope the project at the outset. As we evolve the requirements of this solution, what was required progressed. There were 6 key business deliverables that we had initially agreed upon as being the requirements of the future state. That started out with only 3. But in further defining what the solution would look like and what the needs of the business truly were, the requirement list doubled. Based on that, the scope of the project also expanded. So we would encourage individuals considering this type of an implementation to really honestly ask, what are the needs of your business? What are the objectives you are seeking to accomplish? And what is truly going to be required out of a solution to achieve those objectives? Next up is to ensure that the right people are involved at the right time. Had we engaged the entire stakeholder group earlier, we likely would have gathered some of those requirements sooner. There were key members of the functional team that even as far out as building that picture, that shared vision, we hadn't truly considered as being impacted by the initiative. As we realized that those integrations and those touch points exist between their workflows and the ones we were looking to improve, we realized they need to be brought into the conversation. And those expanded conversations led to awareness of not only challenges, but also opportunities for improvement we hadn't even considered. And so ensuring that all the right people are involved at the table at the right time to ensure all the information is gathered, communicated, and ultimately involved in the end deployment and sustainment of the solution will ensure success. Once all of that work is done and a clear path to the end solution is done, it's time to define what the logical deployment plan is. And we say logical here because just as the solution sought to develop a plan or a method of planning that was feasible, consistent, replicable, and at the end of the day transparent, so too does the plan for deploying such a solution. So we needed to ensure that the plan adhered to things such as individual availability, the capacity of the business, all of the work that had to go into it, and lay it out in a logical sequence that would allow us to meet all of the milestones along the way, but also achieve all of the integrated components that a solution of this nature is involved with. So ensuring that we're being honest with ourselves and our stakeholders as to who's required, what is required, and how long is required is key to being successful. Often along the way, in achieving the first 3 points, compromise is required. And the trade-off between achieving business deliverables, getting the scope right, and ensuring the people are involved, you're often going to find that some trade-offs need to be made. The needs of some teams may need to be pragmatically managed in order to achieve overall business value. Those conversations need to happen, but it needs to be a negotiation, an agreement that if a team is going to give something up from their requirements, it's because the business or that individual group is going to get something back in a different way elsewhere. And identifying where those trade-offs exist and agreeing to them early is very important to being successful in this type of initiative. And finally, that cross-functional engagement of users from each of the functional teams and each of the major groups involved in those functions is critical to ensuring this type of project is a success. System integration only exists to integrate the process of the users that use those systems. So integrating systems without integrating the workflow, process, and engagement of those users is doomed to failure from the start. And so engaging the users and having them tell us what the systems are and what the integration points are that are needed to allow them to be more effective, get the data they need to be more timely in their decision making, and drive transparency on the organization is a much more effective method and one that is likely to deliver high value through planning and execution of the initiative. Finally, results. Why invest all this effort? There are compelling reasons why a solution of this nature is critically important to an organization of Chevron's nature and of many of the companies I've worked with in the last several years. Some of the results Chevron has been able to identify and quantify today are faster portfolio optimization, What took their planners weeks to do are being done in days. 5 weeks has gone to 3 days per plan iteration. More plans are being generated, which are leading to better business results. Data integrity and consistency is being adhered to across the business unit, achieving visibility across the entire portfolio. All the teams are using the same tool. All their opportunities are stored in the same place, and everybody knows where to go to for the same data. Performance information is available for every group, every individual, at any time. If one area is performing better than another, there's no question about where that benefit is coming from or how that analysis was done. The single source of data allows maturation of opportunities from inception to inclusion in the portfolio and measurement of the performance of that portfolio. They are able to progress the opportunities in a single tool without the need to transition between different elements of the plan, different tools, different spreadsheets, or different sources of truth. All of this results in more efficient use of human and capital resources, both in how they are planned for and actually used in the execution of the plan and the execution of the overall portfolio. In conclusion, Chevron's team has stated that implementing the asset investment solution has been a differentiator for their stakeholders within their organization. The solution has replaced 2 in-house opportunity tracking tools and numerous, which you can read as dozens, of ad hoc spreadsheets that were previously in use by the team. Business planning and conducting updates have gone from being multiple weeks to a few days of effort. An extension of that is that in a recent internal post-deployment evaluation, the efficiency of the asset team members was rated as being 30% greater after the deployment of AIS compared to previously. With that number in mind, the solution has delivered the desired results and delivered significant business value to the Chevron organization. So that concludes my presentation today. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I'm happy to stick around and answer any question that anybody has, and a full copy of the paper will be available to the attendees following the presentation. Thank you very much, and I open myself to questions.